This is the MVP podcast where we talk to the most valuable people in sports. My name is Courtney Stephen, and today's MVP is Edward Jones. Not the money man, but the player development professional. This guy broke down exactly how much money you can make, what it takes to be successful, and what are the biggest risks that players face when they step on campus, especially when you got to deal with stuff like name, image, and likeness and going to a whole new city. It was an interesting episode. This guy knows his stuff. He's run his own conferences. He's written books. He's done courses. And on this episode, he's going to give us the game. So if you get any value out of this, do me a big favor, like it, subscribe, share it with somebody, because that's how we get more guests on the show. So without further ado, this is my man, Ed Jones. Tell me a little bit about the conference that you just ran. Player development conference. You brought together people from all over the nation to talk about the subject that you know best. Why don't you tell me, first of all, like, what is player development at a high level?
Yep.
And then why would people come to a conference about it? Like, it's not a new topic, but it's definitely growing in popularity.
Yeah, so player development is the enhancement of the athlete experience through holistic and intentional programming and initiatives. And as you said, it's growing, but it's super niche, very, very niche, but it is growing immensely. Like I did a podcast last year that said like the growth in college football alone, Division I college football in America alone has been 191%. That's crazy from when I started to now. So people come to this conference. It kind of started like when I got enrolled in 2016, I did not know what I was doing.
Yeah.
They told me be there for the players, get them in the community, and get them jobs. That was it. So I had no marker of what is great, what is not. And so over time, I created this program called Beyond the Field Program. And so as the years went on, I created LLC, did some blogs, because I never wanted anybody to be where I was at. Mm-hmm. Well, as we got together, everybody has a conference. There's American Football Coaches Association. There's strength conferences. There's dietitian conferences. There's academics conferences. There's equipment conferences, video conferences, whatever you want, right? So we had all these player development people and saying like, well, where can we go? And the AFCA allowed us to do a couple panels, but people kept asking. I remember I was in New York. I was in an Uber and people were like, man, we got to get a conference. We got to get a conference. And I was like, all right, I'm going to step out on faith and I'm going to do it. I'm going to do a conference. I'm going to do it virtually. I was doing some Zooms before that with people in the space when I was in the role. So we would meet up probably once a month on a Zoom. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to kind of do it like that. I was like, man, I hope we get more attendees than the speakers. We ended up having over 100 last year and somewhere around 80 this year. And so people come because you get to connect. You get to learn. There's different systems. Like it's the one segment where you can connect in our field. In the field of player development. There's no other space like that. And so I'm excited. That's why people came. My goal is always to help people grow, help people network, help people partner, and hopefully get people hired. And so we were able to do that virtually, and we're walking into it in person next year. It'll be in person. I almost said the city. I can't speak on the city yet. We got to get it signed, but it will be somewhere in person.
Yeah. That's dope. So in 2016, you broke into player development and at the collegiate level. I mean, I know they have it in the NBA, in the NFL. You know, they usually talk about like the rookie symposium where guys get a crash course in real life because they're coming out of college where they've had a lot of hand holding. Then somebody drops a serious bag on them and they're like, okay, before you go and burn the house down, here's some things you should know about how to handle your money, how to handle your relationships, how to plan for the future, how to do things outside of the lines. But you're preemptively, you're hitting guys with that stuff when they're in college that, you know, they come from out of town. They might not know a lot of people. They might not be plugged in and you're helping them get connected. So how did you even get in? How did you know that player development was a thing? And how did you get into this part of the industry?
Yeah, so I was coaching in my alma mater, Hightower High School there in Missouri City, Texas, outside of Houston. And I was just helping our high schoolers get recruited. And the head coach of the University of Houston, my alma mater, Go Cougs, he came in and he was like, hey, I said, Coach, here are our kids that get recruited. We didn't have a great class that was coming. I'm always honest, but I said the next class is really loaded. And my head coach was like, hey, Coach, if I was you, I'd try and get Jones. And the head coach looked at me. He was like, that's why I'm here. I need to interview you right now. And I was like, okay. And so he basically said, you know, you can be director of player development and high school relations. And I was like, hey, this is awesome, coach, because I want to learn more about O-line play. He's like, you're not coaching. you are literally just going to help these guys. He said, if you want to coach, you need to be the best director of player development ever. So I was like, all right, cool. I like people. I like relationships. I'm going to develop these players as I get to coaching, because my goal was I'm going to be a position coach in 5 years. I'll be a head coach in 15 years. That was my goal going into it. And as time went on, it was one event that really, really, truly changed it for me. We had an alumni event. As I was learning what player development was, this is like month 4 where I'm learning, like I'm building relationships. Oh, I get to meet all the players. I get to help. I get to meet the parents. I'm in recruiting. I started liking because I had a hand in everything. Mm-hmm. And so we had this alumni event. So what our head coach, his focus, Coach Tom Herman at the time at the University of Houston was, University of Houston had a coach, Coach Bill Yeoman, for like 30 years, I think, something like that. And then every year, like it was like coach 4 years, 2 years, 3 years. It was a frayed alumni. So he wanted to come, to unify that alumni. So we created this event. It was awesome. It was a massive success. And I just remember one of the players was homeless, and this was a big time player. His name was in our position meeting room. We're still trying to break his records. And I just remember thinking, how does that happen? And if he made bad choices, can he come back? Because we're not taking down his jersey. We're not taking his cleats away. We're not taking down his records. So he hadn't done anything that crazy, right? And it just got to me. It just stuck in like the forefront of my head for I was just like, in staff meetings, just like daydreaming, like, what can we do? How can we stop this? How can we? And that's when I hung up the proverbial whistle. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to dive into this player development. Basically, I don't know what it looks like as I was figuring it out. But I was like, whatever I got to do to make sure that doesn't happen. Make sure that does not happen to any player, not just because he was a star, but that any player comes to this university, in a sense, gets everything out of them. And then, hey, sayonara, thank you. And so that's when I really, truly understood player development, started studying student-athlete development programs, and just really fleshed out what works. What am I passionate about that unifies with what creates impact in people's lives? And so, that was Eureka moment, man.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, you always wonder what brought people to a moment. And I don't remember what movie it is where it just starts and it's like a crazy scene and it pauses and the guy's like, you're probably wondering how I got here. But
is that Revenant when the bear was like, I was like, yo.
Yeah, this is crazy. But no, you think about it, and sports is this crazy vehicle that can bring you from one place to a completely different status and perspective and different opportunities. You often hear about it going the other way, people pulling themselves out of tough situations and giving themselves a fresh start and whatever. But then at the other end, if there's no transition plan, then it can get rough in a hurry, especially because the mental dynamic, the social dynamic, things change. It doesn't always work out. Very, very, very few people get to choose when and how they hang them up at the end of the career. So I personally, as a player who, I'm 5 years since I played my last football game, but I kind of the pandemic lasted 2 years. So I got forced into a graceful exit because I still thought I was going to play. And then I was like, okay, I'm okay with this. I'm at peace. Yeah. Not everybody gets that kind of runway to transition out of the game. So you're helping people prepare for the next stage, whether that's in 2 years, 4 years, or if they go pro and then they have to figure things out. So what are some of the main pitfalls that people find themselves in either while they're playing or when they transition out that you're trying to prepare them for?
Yeah, the major pitfalls, I think the biggest one is athlete identity. This is something I found out at a Black Student Athlete Summit. It's just like people have literally identified as an athlete their entire life, right? So when a kid's 4, 5, 6 years old, and most of the guys I'm with that play college football have scholarships, they knew pretty early on like they were going to get a scholarship, unless they got a growth spurt late in life. And so they've been so good that that's been their identity. You're the great defensive lineman. You're the great running back. You're the quarterback. You're the, for other sports, you're the home run hitter. You're the anchor leg of the 100. And that's all as your brain. And some of these memories even begin before they even start to get memories and, steam and understand. And so you hear that your whole life and you come to college where it's like, wait a minute, I might have been the best in my city, but I'm not even the best in my room or on my row. And it's tough because that's never happened, right? Some have never failed. Some have been shielded. A lot of what we're seeing now, and honestly, I tell people with recruiting, is parents shielding their kids. And I had to deal with this from, failure and what's truly happening. And so that's part of it, right? The other part is because of that, a factor of that is there's no aspect of like what's a plan, right? So everybody says plan B. I always say the plan A should be the one that whatever plan is going to last longer should be plan A. So nobody's going to play 40 years of any sport. LeBron James, shout out. Tom Brady, maybe 20. LeBron might, man, he might play.
Hey, he got dragon blood, man. He could play forever.
He might, because I mean, even at 50, he'd be dropping 11 a game, which is effective for somebody. So outside of LeBron, who can play forever, it's what is the plan? What is it? And I think they don't identify their skills, what they're skilled at, outside of their athletic skill. Like, I'm really good at running. I'm strong. I can figure things out. Well, then you also, you got a really good grade in math, right? So you can kind of, what's your critical thinking skills? Or do you like reading? And they'll kind of push other things back. It's like, so for me, I'm fighting that. I'm fighting. This is what you've known your whole life. I'm fighting the failure, the identity failure. I would call it, for lack of a better word, like I've been the man and I'm not the man anymore. Right. And I'm also fighting, I don't have a plan. Like I'm going, because like I used to work for coaches that always say, who wants to go to the NFL? I raise my hand every single time. I know I don't have a chance, but I always like, if somebody needs a player for like half a play, like I run out and then they call a timeout and I'm done. I would be there. So that's what you're fighting. But the hardest fight is you're fighting coaches too, because coaches are former players and they don't want to give it the time. They can't see certain things. But as far as an athlete, it's just the aspect of them knowing that they're more than an athlete. Right. I know people hear that a lot, but like seriously, like their whole life has been, how was your game? You go to family reunion. Hey, boy, that boy scored 7 touchdowns. Hey, come on over here, son. Like, he dropped 40 points. Like you hear that everywhere you go, grocery store, because you're bigger than people, right? School, class, like.
Or they'd be like, how's football going? And you're not even starting or nothing. And they just be like, yeah, team's doing good. Like, oh yeah, you been scoring touchdowns. Like how you? Yeah. Like that stuff is hard to deal with. That stuff's hard to deal with.
Man, we got blasted by Vince Young my freshman year. My little brother's like, how many sacks you got? I'm like, bro, we just lost 63-14. You think I got a sack? Like,
right.
And it's just that identifier, like, and it's tough. It's tough because you can break it as much as you can, but they got to go back into their classroom, around their friends, around their family. And some people associate or build relationship with them based off of that. And so you're just breaking down a lot, but really showing them like you are an incredible human being who happens to be really good and the 1% who can do this. Right. But, there's other things you can do.
And then, no, you know what? That's real, though, because you mentioned some people are friends with them because of the identity. They're friends with the identity.
Absolutely.
They like the identity, like the association. They feel like I'm cooler because I'm with somebody who does something everybody admires. So there's a lot of shifts, when things change. And I think the modern athlete is more conscious of this. It's partially because of social media, so we could talk to each other and whatnot and get access to all these resources and stuff. But, I think you just have so many more examples of how it could go wrong that you've seen. So you're like, I don't want that to happen to me. So athletes are learning about how to manage their money and how to handle the relationships and how to think long term. So specifically in that sense, careers is a thing, social is a thing. NIL has been a big thing that's changed. How does that affect player development? Are they distracted? Are they trying to build their personal brands? Are they now thinking about outside but short term? Like how has the NIL affected player development?
Yeah. So when it came out, there were two things I thought. I felt like the way it's written, it can help because you're teaching them how to become a business person, right? So now going back to what we talked about, everybody wants to associate with you. So let's flip these associations to connections to help you make money or give you exposure to something, right? But then as I started to see what people were doing and building out these NIL departments, and everybody talking about branding, I knew once players got money, people were going to say, coaches included, like, all right, he got money. He good. Like, we don't need to develop him. He can use his own money on his own time. And that part of that happened. Where NIL changed for player development, and it hit player development initially kind of hard. I saw it when I was in it, and I saw the people, because it's like, look, that program and stuff is cool, but we need to get this kid on our campus, we got to get them some kind of NIL money. Right. You got to, what do they do with their contract? So now I'm sitting here like, hey, don't get distracted to a point where I'm looking at contracts and I'm about to create a system that's like, okay, you got to have so many posts by Thursday. Let me text them on Thursday to make sure they got their post out. So they're not thinking about posts on Friday when our coaches are trying to focus on the game or when they have a test. Like, or, when we have final exams, did you get those, and it got crazy from that standpoint. And it was tough too, because we could help, but we couldn't give advice. And so it's like, I'm helping you. And if you see a kid doing the wrong thing, you're kind of like, I
You can
can't
help,
tell
but
you
you can't
nothing.
give advice. Like, what do you mean by
Correct.
that?
Correct. So it's like, I can help you if you say, hey, coach, what would be the steps to find a brand? All right, here are the steps. Hey, coach, can you help me find certain brands that fit me? I can't. That's advice. I
Oh,
can't do that.
okay.
So,
Yeah, I understand.
so you see what I'm saying? So I'm sitting in the office with an office lineman who says, look, I don't want to make any money. I just want free pans. I want all this. And I'm sitting there like, but you're the Big 12 offensive lineman of the year. Like, they'll pay you money. Like, they'll
Right.
give you the pans. Like,
Know your worth, son.
yeah. And so it's like, but I can't say that in a sense. I can say it to the entire team. So it's like, I can help, but I can't advise. So then the kid comes in and says, hey, here are the 5 top brands I should do. And I'm like, them don't align with you. But if I can advise you, you wear sunglasses every single day. So why don't you just get with a sunglass company? Or we had a young man who thought he couldn't do it. He's one of our specialists, because specialists, man, they have incredible personalities. Specialists, offensive linemen. And he was like, yeah, man, I'm not going to make any money. I was like, you crazy? Like, do you realize everybody warms up to you? Like, and so it's like that whole deal was kind of weird, because then thankfully compliance could help, look at contracts, because some of these companies, like I had to tell guys, all money ain't good money, and business is business. They don't care if you're 18 years old. So like, for instance, there was a kombucha company that was having our players sign up. And basically, if the players got drafted, they automatically got a new term. Their contract got extended. And the players didn't even know. Like, you know what I'm saying? So let's say I play, and I'm doing this kombucha in college. I get drafted in the first round, and they still got images of me holding kombucha. I'm like, bro, I haven't drunk that in 2 years.
Right.
Like, but it's like, hey, you signed this contract. Or like, guys were signing their likeness away for $25. Like, $25. I was like, bro, just come work this football camp. We'll give you 80.
Right.
So so it's just like,
no, you have to be hip to so many things, really, because I guess it is the risks, but it's there's more points of vulnerability, because people are trying to get to you, and it seems all well and good, but the layers of complexity are just amplified. Like, I remember I was in college, there was a big thing at Ohio State where guys were like getting tattoos and stuff like that. So it can range from like gifts to people wanting to use your image. I think one thing I've learned in my player development journey is that everybody doesn't have to be SEC Player of the Year to provide value. If you're well spoken, you got a certain group of people, you got a niche that people are following you and trying to see what you're up to, and you can speak to those people. Like, that's a value, and the more you can cultivate that audience, those 1,000 true fans, like a brand will give you something for that if you're able to put together your package and your value.
And it's, to your point, real quick, like that's what I was sitting there listening to these people talk about brand, and I'm like, I'm reading reports like, hey, companies are moving away from big brand influencers, because they're like, well, this second string inside linebacker at University of Wisconsin loves fishing, and he's got 4,000 fans. So like, why would we go get a superstar who doesn't like fishing when we could just get this kid from Wisconsin, pay him the money, give him commission on it, and he makes money? So it's just like that brand and stuff. Man, I'm so tired of hearing people talk about brands. You got people talking about brands who, like, you look at their brand like, bro, what's your brand? Like, how what is, so anyway.
Yeah. So what is something that a player, he lands on campus, she lands on campus. What is the first step in player development? Is it like where do you even begin at? Because there's so much to cover.
It's a lot. So in our newcomer orientation, we always wanted to get them. Well, before they got on campus, we always want to take care of housing. We always wanted to like make sure like they got a place to stay. But when they got on campus, it was meet everybody you're gonna see, because you know how it is. You're a new person to the team. You have all these adults telling you what to do. You're like, man, who is that? Like, who is this?
Right.
And so you're gonna have let's meet all the people. Parents meet parents. Let's make connect group. Here's this. Let's have a barbecue. Let's have some type of eating, and then coach is gonna lay out the program. Like, here is the rules. Here it is, and then it's like, all right, sweet. There it is. Like, we're talking about culture, and then you're going to the training room to get ready for a physical. You're walking through the strength staff to see, or strength weight room to see where you're going to go. you're walking around the building, just getting them used to the everyday things.
Mm-hmm.
And as time went on throughout that week, we added more. But once they get there, it's just, well, you want to make them feel welcome because, I mean, it's a lot, right? It's a lot for the parents, really. The players are more like, hey, I'm ready to go. And like this is the welcome. So what can we do to welcome them? How many simple questions can we answer, right? I've worked in places with people, professionals who are like, we got to go deep. And I'm like, no, we don't. Like, we need to answer simple questions. How do they get back into this building tomorrow when nobody's holding the door? Where's the restroom at? Like, how do they get into the locker room? Where do they put, like, let's just give them simple. We can build on the simple, but let's build the foundation. Like, what does this ID card actually do? Okay, cool. Which door? Where do I park? How about that one, right? And so we're giving them the simple. Whenever I help plan, it was like, let's answer simple. Let's just keep repeating simple question, simple, right? Because I've seen kids get chewed out because the kid is like, going back to what we said, all right, so we break it down, and the kid is always used to coming up to the front, but at one place I was at, it was a meritocracy, so you had to kind of earn it, and it's like, he comes up there with the captains, it's like, what are you doing up here? And it's just like, we can avoid that situation if we tell the young man, like, hey, freshman kind of in the back, you're in the back of the seat. Kid, they'll go to the room and sit in the front.
Oh no, that was in my college. It was a senior. The seniors got the front row. The juniors were in the next two rows, and then it was the sophomores, and then the walk-ons sat at the back. You can't barely. Y'all in here? You can't even see them at the back. So that's important because the support system. What I heard you say is you got to connect them with the support system.
Mm-hmm.
You got to get them familiar with where they're going to spend the most time. And then you got to give them the confidence to navigate a little bit independently because nobody's going to hold your hand. I feel like that's a big crutch is that there's almost sometimes too much hand holding to the point where then people get out of college and they don't even know how to act. Like they're graduating with whole degrees, can't send an email. You know what I mean?
It's wow. Like legit wow. Like, can you send me an email? Like, what you mean, coach? So how you been in school? Like, but it's crazy because, like, to your point with the welcoming piece, I always wanted to make sure that before I even talked about everything I wanted to talk about player development, I would tell them, like, let me do that later on. Yeah. I just want to be around, say, see me. I'm everywhere where they're at. So when kids look confused, I'm walking up to them, hey, what question you got, right?
Yeah.
They don't know. They don't know what to ask. And so I'm like, all right, so I become the guy, hey, he answers all the questions. And then eventually I tell him, hey,
and then so you establish yourself as somebody of value because you're the connector, you're the answer man. Like,
absolutely.
They know they can come to you. So in player development, I'm sure there's a lot of different roles. There's not just one player development person. What is that like in the organizational chart? Like, what does that look like? Like, what's an entry level role for player development? Like, what's a senior role? And then, like, also, how much money do people can they expect to make? Like, are you coming in as a GA and like you're just working for your masters while you're doing this, or is it like GA is graduate assistant for the uninitiated? But yeah, like how does that work?
Shout out to the GAs. So yeah, I'll kind of walk you through what I've seen. The first one is a student intern, and that could be paid, that could be free. I never got a chance to get someone paid in that position, but so my people were free. And then from there, you get a student assistant where you are getting some type of pay or work study. Oh, I take that back. I did have somebody do a work study, student assistant. Then from there, some people have had player development GAs where, like you said, you're trying to get, you're going to get your stipend, but you're there to get your degree. Then you have what would normally start off as like a coordinator. So that's somebody, man, the way they do it is whatever the state max is for full-time income or minimum is, they're paying that. You're getting that 30, 40,000. Then you get a manager that's like, 50, 60. When I was a director at the University of Houston, coming from high school, I was making about, at Hightower High School, before I left, my coach gave me a package to make about $77,000 to $85,000. In my interview with the University of Houston, Tom Herman was like, you can make $50,000, no more, no less. I was like, ooh. So I took that cut, but I felt like I was gonna get it back. And so I'll talk about let me go back to the roles and I'll talk about salary. So then you go director to like assistant athletic director, which I was at one point. You could be associate athletic director, senior associate athletic director, executive director, all that stuff, until you get, I think it kind of caps at senior associate athletic director. And so you have
Which
great
is
opportunities.
that's just like a very high ranking role
Oh,
in the university, period.
that's you get that on your business card. Like you are like, first of
You're
all, you
calling
making bread.
shots.
Yeah, you call
Yeah.
a shot. Like it ain't. Hey, bro, I'm not coming to this meeting. I'll see y'all. Y'all have a good one. Like so. So salary wise, like when I was at Houston, I made 50. Then the next year I made 60. And then I got fired. And then I told Kansas they were trying to get me for like 62. I was like 180. So we got to 70, which when I found out, here's the key. I found this out. Somebody was asking everybody what their moving fees were or their moving costs were. Moving costs are 10% of your salary. So don't ever tell people what your moving costs are. So I was like, why is he asking about moving costs? Somebody's like, because he's figuring out salaries. I was like, that makes sense. And don't ask position coaches what their moving cost is because you get shattered. Like, dang, this dude make in one check what I make all year. I told a coach that one time. Like, funny story. I was leaving on a Sunday because I come in. The players there. I did a little something, but I come in just to get my week set. He's like, "Man, you out of here?" I said, "Coach, you literally make my entire salary every single week. I will see you. I will see you." Or I think we got paid once a month. I can't remember. Was it once a month? Might have been once. No, it can't be once a month. I can't remember anyway. But I said, whenever we get paid, you get my salary. So I will see you tomorrow, Coach. I'm not staying here with you. But anyway,
that's hilarious.
I went to, so I got 70 at Kansas. At Baylor, I made 110. So I was assistant athletic director. So sometimes those titles help you get to a certain number. But I know that there's some people, you get to senior associate athletic director. There's some people probably pulling in 2. There's one person who's pulling in over 400, but they're outlier.
They're probably like in a bigger conference too, right?
Yeah. It's a whole deal. Like they got different money over there.
Mm-hmm. Like SEC compared to like a mid-major or like ACC, Big Ten, because it all trickles down. The athletic department as a whole has more money to go around. They eat more programs that are actually revenue generating versus kind of just recreational. But it makes sense.
I mean, even in the Big 12, right? I was at Kansas making 70. Baylor calls me to do the same thing. Now it's assistant athletic director, so it's a promotion. But you're talking about a $40,000 pay raise. My coach was like, "Hey, what can we do?" I said, "Coach, it ain't nothing you can do, man. Respectfully, I'm out of here. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm gone. Like, this is more than half of my salary. Like, I'm out of here, man. I was saving stuff. That was like the best leaving week. I'm sitting there hugging babies and everything. Man, I'm gonna miss you, man. I'll see you September 2nd, but I'm out of here."
Y'all got Roman. I'll call you.
They gave me like 8 helmets on the way out. Everything.
Yeah,
man.
but you know what? I feel like that's kind of how college sports and sports in general are. Is that you mentioned it? There was one coach at a place that was there for like 30 years, and then there's other coaches who kind of turn over every like 2 to 4 years, and I feel like there's a number of factors that play into that. But part of it is because one, it's reflective of what happens on the field. If the coach is doing well or not doing well, they either get a chance to go to a bigger school or the school is unhappy and then they go in a different direction. And the same for each individual. They get opportunities to go to a bigger opportunity. Like they do well, they get a chance to go to a school where they can get paid more. Or when the coaching staff turns over, everybody, like you didn't drop any interceptions. You know what I'm saying? Like you didn't miss any blocks, but if you're on the staff, then that's part and parcel with being in the sports world. It's like there's a lot of dynamic moving parts that affect the reality of your working situation.
Yeah, it's a lot. Like that's, when I was at Houston, to your point, I'm sitting there thinking to myself, like, I'm gonna get a chance to talk to the head coach. I don't have nothing to do with what's on the field. I got to, I'm helping players. Didn't get to talk to them. I can. So I tell people all the time, like, make connections in the athletic department, make connections on campus, like, because they will tie you to that coach, and it's like, if you with a coach who don't have a plan to win, it kind of, it sucks, but they'll get you up out of there, like, no matter what you've done, and then, it's a tough business. So you just always got to make sure, you're locked in.
Yeah. So what kind of, no, I appreciate you sharing that too. What kind of advice do you have for people? You said, meet people in the athletic department and whatnot, but like, what kind of advice do you have for people who are trying to break into player development and stuff like that? Because it sounds like there's a particular skill set. You really have to be good with people. You got to be resourceful. You got to, you probably got to be super organized because you're helping other people stay organized. But like, what do you have to do to enter into one of these opportunities and be prepared?
So before I answer that, I'm gonna go back to what you said. I tell people the three biggest skills you need in player development. You got to be a relationship builder, a lifelong learner, and you got to be adaptable. Like, because it is, relationship. You can't be in a role. You can't be in relationships. Like, that's self-explanatory, right? Lifelong learner. You got to learn so much. Like the NIL rules, you got to learn this. Oh, these kids from Australia. What are they like? You're learning. That's what I loved about it because you're always learning. And then adaptability. You never know what your schedule is. And so, I remember I was interviewing an intern, a possible intern at the University of Kansas, and the young lady said, I need a schedule that tells me everything I'm gonna do. Like, I'm super organized, which, to your point, you have to be organized about what you're organized about, but the calendar is not organized. If that makes sense. Some people understand that. And I was like, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what tomorrow's gonna look like, like, but inside of that chaos, there's organization. For people that are looking into it, and it's tough for me, and I'm gonna start doing some podcast episodes on this. I get this all the time. How do I get into it? I'm like, I was a high school coach. The number one thing is just like be where your feet are. What was happening, and it's tough for people to hear that. I get it, but what was happening was I was doing such a good job helping my players get recruited that their friends were at other schools saying, "Man, we wish we had Ed Jones." And so while they were all on this campus visits, they were talking about me on these college campuses. To where one coach, shout out to Coach Curtis Looper, who's at Missouri. He was at TCU at the time. He told me, he said, Jones, you're not going to be on a high school level long. I said, well, what you mean, Coach? He said, these kids talk about you everywhere they go, about how you do things, Coach, whatever. So be where your feet are, be great at that. Number two is you got to, it goes back to those connections. What I did when those coaches came in and they offered, whenever they came, I wrote them a letter. Thank you so much for stopping by to check out our players. But when they offered a player, I would write a letter to the head coach, the position coach, and the coach who recruited the area. And so basically saying, thank you so much for this opportunity you've given to my player. And so now they remember. And one thing I did was pretty cool. I made vertical business cards. So everybody's business cards are horizontal. Mine were vertical, so they had to do this. And it was crazy. One time, this coach from BYU came in, and he was like, I've seen you somewhere. And I was like, Coach, I've never met you. He's like, you're the guy with the vertical cards. I was like, oh, let's go. And so it's just like, number one, be great where you're at. But then these interactions you have with people, you got to make it memorable, right? And sometimes maybe it's not, hey, I want to get into player development. It may be, hey, you said you work in player development. What's the biggest challenge you have? Well, the biggest challenge I have is this. And if you had somebody who could help you, how could they help with that challenge? So now they're giving you the game. So for me, I would have said, shoot, I would have loved somebody that could just with all this chaos happens, have a organized aspect of when we this when we meet, this when we do things. So then now that person can say, well, reach back out on LinkedIn. Hey, I thought about what you said. What you're looking for is my strength. I would love to come shadow, spend some time talking with you, whatever it may be, right? Because player development's at a place right now where the biggest question I hate to hear, and it sounds so bad, is when people say, well, so what is player development? I'm just like, bro, here we go. I got 130 podcasts.
Can you please like and subscribe?
That's it, man. It ain't that hard. It ain't I got a newsletter. And so it's just I thought about every podcast saying this is what player development is. But it's just that. So be where your feet are, make incredible interactions memorable. And then you got to be strategic. If you get in the building, I tell people all the time, just get in the building, be great at where you're at. If you're in the building, you're good. You're one step ahead of the next person. I was getting.
Yeah, hey, you're onto something. Sorry, I was just about to underscore this and be like, listen, can you go in on that? Because just getting in the building is sports. There are only so many opportunities. There's only so many teams. There's only so many roles. You might have to take a role that's not exactly the role you want to get on a team so that you can show your stuff, so you could step into the role that is the one that is your dream role eventually.
So I love what you said. The people, out of all the people I work with, the most questions I got about player development was from this group, and it shocks everybody, equipment managers. Because equipment managers saw what I did, they saw how I helped, and they say, man, I want to learn from you. You also want to know what's the easiest way to get into a college football program or a program overall? Equipment. They need equipment. Every year we're getting new equipment people. And so they get to see that. So I had at the conference, there was someone who was in equipment. They were saying, I work in equipment. I want to do player development. I've expressed this to my director. The director's kind of you got to take care of this first. But I was like, they were they asked somebody else, what should I do? I said, you in the building, find that, you got to come up there when it's not your time. when your equipment director's on vacation and there's nothing and it's just coaches and whatever, you find time to meet with that director of player development. When y'all are done, or if it's a morning workout, you ask the director of player development, hey, do you mind if I grab lunch, if I grab dinner? Like, do you mind if I just come up to your office and help? And then sometimes you can keep it real. Like if somebody would have told me, hey, I want to do this, but I can't let, so-and-so see that I'm helping. Cool. The back door is right there. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
But you're in the building and that helps so much. If you're in compliance, if you're in sports med, those students always ask me what they want to do. It's just getting in the building. A lot of people don't want to hear that, but you get a leg up. Like what I want to tell people is I got 45 messages in my LinkedIn at certain days, right? And out of those 45 people, one person was in an athletic building. So I'm going to spend my time with the person that's in the building because they've already taken care of that. Mm-hmm. And so it's too, and being strategic. Like, can I work a camp? Can I work this? Can I just be in the
be in the presence of people who can possibly give you an opportunity?
Thank you. Like, let me jog around.
Can I go to the player development conference and meet some people?
That's it. Okay, the staff always plays noon ball. I'm gonna go play whenever I want to hoop. Hey, y'all, I'm playing at noon. The football staff's always in here. They come in Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I'm gonna hoop with them because it ain't gonna be 10 people walking out that office. They always gonna be short somebody. Right. So I'm gonna make myself available so I can hoop with them because I'm getting to know them. And then, boom, hey, what you do? I chop it. Oh, y'all work for football. Hey, y'all got anybody? Y'all need any help? Or like you said, go to the player development conference. Like, there you go. I got nervous about straight up. So I got shameless plug. I got nervous about the cost, but I thought about it. Somebody said, "What would you do if you was a college student?" I was like, you know what? I would have picked up a couple of shifts to make sure I could pay that money to get in the presence of people. Why? Because what happened was we had people ask questions to directors of player development. So I put out a LinkedIn post yesterday telling people like, what if I told you can have 14 hours of player development content with 20 professionals? Go back and listen to the player development pod. I tell people all the time, when you reach out, take a snippet. Hey, so-and-so, I listened to your podcast. Right. I heard you say this. Why? What does that tell that person? You took time. So most people reward time that somebody already took. That goes a lot longer than, hey, can I pick your brain about what player development is? Nah, I got a 45-minute video that I took time out that's there every single day that you can break down. Like, you can send back. I do my 3 takeaways. Take out the top 10 takeaways. Hey, here are the top 10 takeaways I heard from your podcast episode. Or when you did this YouTube video. Or I looked through your bio. Let me stop, man, because I'll start.
No, you giving out hella game right now because honestly, if somebody wants to reach somebody, there's a lot of noise. And especially the higher, more senior role you have, is a lot of noise. It's people in your inbox. There's people in your DMs. There's people calling you. I got my text messages look like somebody's junk email. Like I just got that little red indicator on there.
746.
You feel me? So to cut through that, you got to be relevant and you got to show that you've done something, you know what I'm saying, different to break through. So I really like that tip. So, okay, we talked about your podcast. We talked about your conference. I'm going to ask you a little bit about the conference. Then I want you to throw a massive alley-oop to your podcast because that's how I found you. And then we connected over social media. So you put together a conference. What were some of the things that you had to put in place from like a logistical standpoint? Because it's not free.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of organization, a lot of communication. You got to be able to market it, sell it. You got to get sponsors. So what are some of the steps, you know, in a nutshell, to putting together a conference if somebody wanted to start a business or just take a shot at putting on an event and trying to make some money like that, or trying to get some people together like that?
Yeah, I'll walk through the whole process. So number one, it was just you start. So I've learned my action. I'm one of those people. I got to get a fire up under me. Like, you got to light a fire. I get going. It sucks, but I was that player that, like, man, 3rd and 1. I'm what's up? They not getting the first down. You know what I'm saying? 1st and 10. I'm like, all right, but this is unfortunately that's still dealing with that. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna put it out. Hey, I'm gonna have a player development conference. It's gonna happen. It's happening next year. So boom, faith step. Now I gotta do stuff, right? So I had 2 interns, and then one intern, I was gonna do it a certain way. She said, we need somebody to help us. Then somebody I worked with at the University of Kansas who did our on-campus recruiting reached out and said, hey, I would love to help you with event management. I'm transitioning this. She was super detailed. And what I tell people this is, what she told me And this is why when I say be great at where your feet are, she said, I want to help you because I know how much you care about player development and I know how much you're going to put into it, but I also know I have a strength to help you. So you never know who's watching, right? So she comes along. Then from there, it's like, okay, what are the topics I want to talk about? I don't want this just to be like a philosophical, like, oh, this is what player development is. So I was like, okay, I want to talk about NIL. Okay, here are 6 people that can talk about NIL because somebody's going to say no. All right, let's get 4. Okay, I want to talk about what it looks like to do player development pro. All right, here we go. Oh, career development would be good. Community engagement would be good. External relationships would be good. Alumni engagement would be good. Like, so I'm kind of walking through a book I wrote and I'm like, what is player development? So let me get all these people to talk. So then it's the acts, right? But I built relationships with these people because I provided value to them in some type of way. So the value I provided was the podcast, but then bringing these people on, interviewing them. I didn't know how interviewing somebody helped people, but they were providing value and they had the same passion I had. They just didn't want to have the time to do the event. So I'm making an ask and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna shoot for the stars. And then I was probably 87% on acceptance rate because of scheduling and things like that. So then you go there, you say, okay, these are the people. How much does this cost? What is the value of somebody sitting at home to listen to these people talk? Now, the first year I kept it low. This is my first year. Second year we took it up. We took it up a notch. And people pay, right? Because value is value. So then you go from, okay, what's the value? And then it's like, okay, what is our in-event engagement going to look like? Because we got to make this engaging. It's on Zoom. We got to make it go. So then you do that, and you're reminding the speakers, hey, here's what you need. So I wanted to make sure the speakers, because I've spoke at conferences where I'm getting stuff like 2 hours before we go. I'm like, so I'm trying to make it as convenient for everybody, even the people that pay. Here's the student price, here's that. So then you have the conference. One thing I did the first year, which I probably will never do again, but it was fun because I'm also learning as you grow, you just can't do everything you used to do.
Right.
So, let me go back to the conference. So the day of the conference, you want to pick the right time. So I actually looked at the Black Student Athletes Summit and I looked at another conference because I didn't want people to overlap. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna pick this weekend because there's nothing there. But then I also picked it strategically in May because in May is when, so you want to be strategic with the picking. It'll always be in May because that's when student athletes on college football campuses are going back home. And that's when
it's less busy.
the NFL's open. The NBA is kind of a little open because people start understanding the playoff look. So there's like this weird 2-week window in sports where people have availability before they leave for vacations. So you do that. All right. So then.
So you started so far, you got, here's my content that I want to do.
Right.
Here's the people who are the specialists who can do this content.
Right.
Then you look at, all right, here, how much is it going to cost for me to put this all together?
Right.
Then you try to find a schedule. So far, that's where we're at.
Right. And then the sponsors, I forgot about the sponsors. So then I put out a whole sponsor link. I knew one person that wanted to get into it. It made sense because he was in the space. This lady, she was just like, shout out to Miss Tara Lynn. Miss Tara Lynn, if you watch this, she was in real estate.
Shout out.
Yeah, she filled the link out twice. So I get on the phone with her and I'm kind of like, I'm thinking to me like, hey, all right, this is how much sponsorship costs. Like, she's like, all right, cool. What do I need to pay? And I'm like, oh, snap. So I'm trying to keep my face straight because I'm like, oh, so that value, you value it at this. And she's been a 2-time platinum sponsor, by the way. Shout out to Miss Tara Lynn and Access Granted. But anyway, so you get the sponsorship. So that helps with some of the money and what you can do, how you can do things. Then I got the speaker gifts, right? So the first year speaker gifts, it was Pi Day. And these planners I used, they were selling planners for $3.14. So I was like, let me buy 50 of them,
Yeah.
And I shipped them. But anyway, so you're looking at that. Okay. And then you got to deal with, okay, how do we deal with this? What goes wrong? Let's communicate. So now social media, I'm communicating. So now I'm sending out speaker announcements, right? One by one though. So for instance, we did a guy at TCU, LaDainian Tomlinson followed my account. He like, oh man, I'm like LT, scored a touchdown. I noticed when we did that, you do that, you get other people in. So then as time goes on, people start to pay. Oh, he gonna speak? Because people are thinking dang, I can't get a hold of so-and-so, but if they're gonna be at this conference, this is I'll pay. If they had I'll pay to get there. If they had a paywall anyway, I would pay. But now they got this conference. So anyway, you had a conference.
Ooh, so you so it's like, yes, I'm providing the knowledge these people have, but I'm also providing access to these people.
Yep.
So you strategically invite people that are going to bring different cohorts of attendees.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because because once again, it goes back to all these people that signed up that want to speak care about this space.
Right.
So they have already poured into the people in the space. They just don't have the time. And so for me, they say it. They're like, y'all are here. They literally said it. They're like, you have taken one step above people because y'all are here with us. And this is the crazy thing about the conference. I'll talk like, and this is a crazy experience. And this is why it probably should be like 3 times what it is. Not only do you pay for access to hear the speaker speak, the speaker stayed on for 2 days. So now you got access to the speakers in the chat. You got access. So they're on. They're not like, let's say you're at a conference, right? In person, speaker speaks, they off the stage. I'm getting my car. I'm going back. Right. The speaker is still in the room, like who just spoke. And then we have breaks. So we have breaks this year. So you can pull, if it's a 15-minute break, you say, man, I have 5 minutes of your time. They're right there. You can't do that on LinkedIn. So anyway, so you have this access. So you're also paying for access. So it is strategic in picking the people because, yeah, there's a profit side of it. Well, let me rephrase that. Not strategic in picking the people, but strategic in when we announce the people. So you'd want to like, okay, if this is the last week of early bird tickets, all right, let's announce this big speaker so people can try and get in with early bird.
There you go.
So people know. And then we kind of go there. I wanted to do that rather than like, because some people would say, we'll just announce them after early bird because you make more money. I'm like,
but you gotta create some scarcity, you gotta create some demand. So basically you use your roster of people to then promote it. You use social media as the channels and their network. You try to leverage that to get to some people you otherwise want to be connected to. Correct. So all in all, you know, it sounds like the number one place to start out is like, what's the content I want to put out there? What are the questions I want to answer? Who's best to answer those?
Absolutely.
And then figuring out how much it's going to cost. That's going to allow you to have a model for, all right, if I have X amount of people come out, I'm gonna break even at this point, and I can, take care of everything, and then find a great date. So this is a player. Go ahead.
And so, sorry to cut you off, but this is where like not a business side, because it's what I'm learning. There's a business side to it. I got kids. I gotta put food in their mouth. It is what it is, right?
Never apologize for making money when you're doing a great thing for people and adding value back to their life.
Value pay. This is value. This is what they pay, and here's the value they get.
That's it.
So the second thing I'm doing is I'm about to go back and rewatch these videos because we recorded it, and I'm going to say these are the 3 things I learned from so and so. They're gonna be, well, how do I get access? Well, here's the link for $55. Half of the ticket cost.
There you go.
So now I'm gonna go back and repurpose it, put out a couple reels, one reel, say, hey man, this is awesome what he talked about. Boom. This is awesome what she talked about. Boom. If you want this, click the link. You got access. That's all you want, right?
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, and you know what? It's a huge business, e-learning and just going online, and because people, like you were saying, this is a relatively new industry, like sector as a whole, and there's not too many resources out there for people to dive into. So, and that goes back to how I found you, is that, I literally typed in Spotify player development, and the number one thing that popped up was something about how to teach players how to kick a soccer ball. Yeah. And then the next thing right under that was your podcast, which was actually about player development. So I clicked on it, and then I started binging the episodes because like you were like the main guy who was talking about all of this kind of stuff, and I was very interested in it because it didn't exist where I was at. Right. So that content that you create, like, that leads into this whole like building an audience, then connecting with people, then providing value back to your audience through the new people you connect with. So tell people what's your podcast called, and what's it about, and what's the conference called? If people want to check it out, where can they do that? Do all the things.
So the podcast is called the Player Development Pod, presented by Beyond the Field. Shout out to Beyond the Field. Got some people trying to snake me. Anyway, but the podcast is called the Player Development Pod. And so the podcast is about like literally, it's about player development. It could be a master's course, honestly, on like, if you go from, I don't know what this is, I tell you what it is. I tell you how it can affect you. I tell you what you can make in it. I tell you the 5 ways it helps coaches. I tell you how you can communicate. I did a series last year on the top questions, top tips. I have 100 tips of player development episode. Go check that out. You can download 100 tips of player development. Yes, you heard that correctly. You can download 100 tips of player development. And so I take people, honestly, like There's a Mike. So here's a testimonial. Mike DeVito played in the NFL for 7 years. Went back to his alma mater. He didn't know what he was doing in player development. He found my podcast. He's doing great in the role. Mike, I know you hear this, Mike. I'm gonna help you create that plan. Let's go. But it literally walks you through because my whole this is crazy. Like I wish I could. Like I literally have episodes for probably the next 6 years.
What?
Just question. All I do is answer questions. Like questions are content. Questions are content. And then you repurpose because if somebody listens to it right now, they're not going to go back and listen to, hey, how do you do small school development? So every year, I'll tell you right now, this is what I'm telling you right now. Every season I open up, the first episode is what is player development. The second episode is how can you get it done? The third episode is going to be how can you play? And it's just this cyclical thing where you learn, but also have all these questions. Like when people ask a question, like, for instance, what's a question I got lately that was really good? Someone's like, let's say someone says, when is it time to start looking for your next player development job? When do you feel like you can lead a program? That's a good question. Matter of fact, let me write that down. I'm gonna rewatch this, and then you can say, okay, this is what you need to have set before you apply for a director position, right? So stuff like that, and it's just a content, and then I turn it into a content, turn it into a course. People pay for a cohort. It's crazy, but
yeah.
So the course literally walks you through everything player development. I am very, very open on a lot of stuff. My mom is always like, "You giving too much away, baby. You giving too much away."
You gave away hella game, right? You gave, but it's the truth too. So, so you got the podcast, you got the conference, you also have a course that people could buy.
Yeah, the conference is called the Player Development Conference. It will be in person next year, and then I have courses. So the products, if people are looking for it, I have 2 books. I wrote the Player Development Guide, and I wrote the Head Coach's Guide to Player Development. I have a course right now. It's a beginner's course. I'm creating I'm going to do player development plan. I have the beginner's course. I'm about to do the advanced course. I'm going to do the ultimate course. So like wherever people want to nibble at, you got it. And then what's the other product? Oh, I have live cohorts. I have a coaching program. I could consult. I could flesh it out. If you want to create a whole program, I could do it all. Whatever what people want, I can get it done if it's not already out there. So
you basically the leading authority on player development right now.
Yes, that's what I've heard, and that's I'm being I'm learning humility, but I used to always have a pastor say, Ed, you think too small of yourself. And he used to say, humility is not you thinking less of yourself. It's just you thinking of yourself less. And so, yes, to answer your question, I am the authority. I am not the pioneer, but I am the only one who's helping people. I have had 6 people get hired this year.
Let's go.
Based off 2 people based off the book, 2 people off the course. So I am helping with that. And the reason why I give out so much stuff, I learned this, that rich people, when we see these $40 million, like they gave $40 million, they gave this. People who have a lot of money give 10% of what they earn. And so there's so much more. So like my mom was like, you gave 100 tips. I was like, Mom, I got 1,000.
Ooh.
1,000. Like that ain't nothing. That 100 tips. That's
a tithe. That's a tithe.
Yeah, come on, straight up. That's an appetizer. I don't even call it appetizer because that's the bread. That's the chips. That's the bread if you go to a steakhouse. That's the chips if you go to a Mexican restaurant. You ain't even bought the appetizer. So that's where I'm at, man. And I have walked into that area of being the lead authority in this because nobody's helping other people, and I'm okay. I'm in this lane by myself, and I joke with people if they want to jump in it with me, man. I hope they can swim deep. I'm in the deep end.
Let's
down
go.
there. No scuba gear.
Let's go. All right. So, hey, real quick, Ed, the last question we always ask people on the show is, it's MVP podcast. Who are your 3 favorite athletes of all time, any era? It doesn't have to be the best. It's your favorite.
Oh, I love that. So my favorite athlete of all time is Hakeem Olajuwon. Growing up in Houston, Hakeem is just you can't tell me nothing bad about Houston, or Hakeem. Like he was a University of Houston Cougar, he's a Houston Rocket, but just the way he played, he could do everything. Like Michael Jordan said it himself, they didn't have an answer for him. Hakeem Olajuwon, and here I am, I'm going to. I think it's a lot. It's been a lot of great centers in the NBA. I'm biased. I think Hakeem Olajuwon is the best center in the NBA because he was top 5 in scoring, rebounds, blocks, steals, field goal percentage. Something else. Like Hakeem Olajuwon come off the pick and hold your best guard. Like, you know what I'm saying? So Hakeem Olajuwon is my GOAT at the center position. So that's number 1. Number 2 is JJ Watt. Once again, another Houstonian. Just, man, I went and watched him play live, and that dude just wore people out, man. just a great, great player. I think he gets underrated for how athletic he was. A lot of people say he was a hard, big effort guy, but Sucker was athletic. Like, that's a big human being too. I saw him 30 feet away from me. I was like, man, that's a big man.
Yeah.
And then number 3, man, I'm trying not to go Houston. Number 3, I'm gonna go with somebody I always like to watch. Man, man. I might have to go. Man, that's a good one. My 3 MVPs, like I'm thinking of people I argue with that I'm like, nah, bro, you can't tell me nothing about them. Oh man, you know what? I'm gonna go. So, man, this is a tough one.
That boy's stressed.
No, for real. Like when you said 3, I was like, I hope that third one come off my tongue. Okay, so it's like a tie.
So go
all
for
right,
it.
so I'm gonna go with the first one. Tina Thompson for the Comets. So the Comets had Cynthia Cooper, Cheryl Swoops, and Tina Thompson. And like Cynthia Cooper and Cheryl Swoops got all the attention, but Tina was like, she was the glue. She was hitting the 3, she was rebounding, she was blocking shots. So like my 3 are like it's Houston, Tina Thompson, Yao Ming, shout out to Warren Moon. Like, I kind of got like, it's all Houston, man. That's sort of, Jeff Bagwell, Craig Biggio. Jeff Bagwell.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, loyalty. I see, man, I respect it though. I respect it, man. Ed Jones, player development, man. You put down mad game. You helped us figure out how to get into it, what it is, how to do it great at a high level, how to teach others. And I think that's what it's all about, man. So you really one of the most valuable people out here, and we appreciate you, man. Thanks for tapping in with us.
Thank you so much. Oh, no, my third one is Andre Johnson. There it is. Hakeem, J.J. Watt, Andre Johnson. There it is. I'm done. But thank you. I it slipped my mind. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm excited. It's been great to meet you. I really appreciate when you send me that message basically saying that you listen to podcasts like that, you help me get more content done. So whenever people send me that, I'm always like in a place where I'm like, man, should I just stop doing this? So I appreciate you. Thank you for having me. Sorry I rambled on. But yeah, thank you.
We love it. All right, man.